The Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka was the most revealing event of the 2024 Formula 1 season so far. Not only did it complete a set of 4 races at tracks with vastly differing characteristics, giving us our most rounded view of the performance of the cars yet, it also marked the first weekend of significant upgrades. What's more, as this race was just 6 months after the last one at Suzuka, it's the best measure so far of the gains made by the 10 teams with their new cars. So what conclusions can we draw? Well, we've picked out 7 key takeaways from the Japanese Grand Prix weekend that reveal all. The return to the kind of track where McLaren excelled last year produced the first definitive evidence of how much it has gained on Red Bull in 2024, and where it hasn't done enough. McLaren's 2024 has gradually improved since an underwhelming season opener in Bahrain, which exposed the slow speed limitations the team needs another year or more to eliminate. As expected, it has performed better at tracks that emphasise medium and high speed aerodynamic performance. McLaren had the 4th fastest car in Saudi, the 3rd fastest car in Australia, and when it came to one-lap pace, the 2nd fastest in Japan. The fact it was just over a 10.5 closer to Red Bull in the first sector means McLaren has chipped away further at Red Bull's medium and high speed advantage. But it was less competitive in Sector 2 compared to 2023 and slightly further off in Sector 3. The slow speed hairpin and chicane, and even the long straights, given it is not especially aerodynamically efficient, are still proving troublesome. The really bad news came in the race, where Lando Norris finished 30 seconds behind Verstappen. That's just over 10 seconds worse than last year. What's more, both Ferraris were stronger on race pace. That demonstrated that Ferrari has made big gains in high-speed performance. McLaren was a little disappointed with its pace at Suzuka overall. As team principal Andrea Stella admitted, Ferrari always had the beating of it. Sergio Perez this weekend was his most convincing of 2024. That's hugely significant given Suzuka was his low point last year. Just 6 months ago, Perez was almost 0.8 of a second slower than teammate Verstappen in qualifying. He was unlucky to suffer damage at the start last year and later clashed with Kevin Magnussen, and he was penalised for overtaking under the safety car before retiring. But 2024 was a completely different story. In qualifying, he was just 66 thousandths of a second slower than Verstappen. The main reason for that deficit was a poor exit from the chicane ahead of starting the lap and not being able to carry as much speed through Degner 2 as his teammates. Perez's qualifying was solid at the opening 3 races, but he was at another level at Suzuka, partly thanks to managing the Pirellis very well over a qualifying lap. He converted that into a 3rd second place in 4 races, and that means he's doing exactly what the team needs him to do. Red Bull team principal Christian Horner says the seat is Perez's to lose, and Suzuka proved a strong case is being made to stay on in 2025. But why, you might ask, should we expect this to be any different to 2023? After all, Perez started last year strongly before enduring a long slump. Well, we don't know for sure how it will play out this year, but Perez is confident he has found his way again after getting lost in 2023. As he put it at Suzuka, invoking Carlos Sainz's famous line from the 2022 British Grand Prix, he stopped inventing when it came to car setup and has got back to basics. Perez has started the season in good form. Even his disappointing 5th place in Australia was partly explained by a loss of downforce caused when a visor tear-off became lodged in a sensitive part of the floor. Suzuka proved that it's far from a foregone conclusion he will be replaced in 2025. Daniel Ricciardo's season didn't start as hoped, but at Suzuka there was a glimmer of hope beyond his first lap crash with Alex Albon, and there could be another psychological boost for him just around the corner. Ricciardo's been pushing Red Bull's second team to look for possible underlying car issues due to his discomfort while trailing RB teammate Yuki Tsunoda in the opening races, and will get his wish of a new chassis for the next Grand Prix in China. RB does not believe there is any difference between the cars to explain the performance disparity, but will rule out an unusual discrepancy with a chassis change that was already on the cards for one of the drivers anyway, to manage chassis mileage across the season. As Ricciardo's seeking what he calls peace of mind, it makes sense for him to swap chassis instead of Tsunoda, who is so happy at the moment. While that has the air of being a last resort, there is some encouragement for Ricciardo. He was not as confident in the car as Tsunoda at high speed in the early races and in Australia. RB even dialed in a bit of understeer to give Ricciardo more confidence, but made the car inherently slower in the process. Ricciardo now admits his feeling in the car probably skewed how they should have approached addressing it. The instruction to Ricciardo is effectively to just get on with dealing with the car as it is. He's accepted that, and at Suzuka, the obvious silver lining was his best qualifying performance relative to Tsunoda so far this year, with a closer margin than his deleted lap in Australia would have had in Q1. We didn't get to see in the race whether Ricciardo could build on that, but it was a useful boost ahead of the chassis change that will eliminate any remaining excuse. F1's return to Suzuka after just 6 months gave a rare opportunity to compare late-season performance from 2023 with early-season performance from 2024. So the question of which team has made the biggest step is a fascinating one. The answer might surprise you, because it's Aston Martin. Despite the green team having solid but unspectacular results at Suzuka, with Fernando Alonso starting 5th and finishing 6th, the car was a massive 1.874 seconds faster in qualifying than it was last year. Last year, the Aston Martin struggled in the high-speed corners at Suzuka at a point in the season where the team wasn't getting the best out of the car. But this year, there was a huge difference with Alonso able to qualify within half a second of pole position. Sauber also made big gains, lapping almost a second and a half faster, while the gains of just under 1.2 seconds made by Haas and Mercedes prove how much progress they have made. But perhaps most surprising is the team at the bottom of the list, Red Bull. Verstappen's pole position time was 0.680 seconds quicker than in 2023 on a weekend where he admitted to struggles with the ride quality and not being completely comfortable with the car. And that gives encouragement to the rest, proving that the hoped-for closing up of the field is happening. This year, the gap from fastest to slowest constructor in qualifying was 1.619 seconds, whereas last year it was 2.172 seconds. The downside is that Red Bull still dominated the race, claiming a 1-2 finish, with the best non-Red Bull 20 seconds behind Verstappen. Charles Leclerc has finished behind Ferrari teammate Carlos Sainz in the 3 races both have contested this year. And Suzuka revealed there's a specific and very surprising reason for that. Leclerc battled against an all-round lack of grip throughout the weekend. He lapped a 10th slower in qualifying than Sainz and said he simply didn't have the grip to go faster. Leclerc suggested the preparation of the tyres for a qualifying lap is the reason for that lack of grip. And he struggled throughout qualifying in the first sector relative to Sainz. The demanding snake section asks a lot of cars, and if the tyres aren't exactly where they should be temperature-wise, then it can cost time. That was certainly the case for Leclerc. It compounded his problems because the failure to set a quick enough time on his first Q1 run meant he burned 2 sets of softs in the first part of qualifying. That meant when it got to the business end of Q3, he only had 1 new set of softs left. Team principal Fred Vasseur felt this was the key to his qualifying struggles. Either way, it's clear that Sainz's advantage in qualifying was crucial to being able to finish ahead not only at Suzuka but also in Melbourne, where he won. And it's very unusual for Leclerc to have trouble with qualifying speed. That reflects the fact that while Leclerc is fundamentally the quicker over a single lap, Sainz is close enough that when the complex challenge of optimising the tyres is particularly difficult, he's ahead. It's not all bad for Leclerc. His race pace was strong at Suzuka, turning 8th on the grid to 4th with a well-executed one-stop strategy. The reason he ended up behind Sainz was fundamentally that he started 4 places behind him. Leclerc was also quick in the preceding races, only finishing behind Sainz in Bahrain because of brake problems and lapping quickly on his way to 2nd in Australia. But Suzuka made clear he needs to up his game in the dark art of tyre preparation in qualifying. Alpine brought its first real upgrade package of 2024 to Suzuka, which included the first step in tackling the car's weight disadvantage and a new front wing. While the upgrade worked as expected, Alpine was still slowest. But the one person who is winning in this situation appears to be Esteban Ocon. That's not only thanks to his tendency to celebrate scraping into Q2 as if it was a victory, but also because he's asserted himself over teammate Pierre Gasly. Ocon's 2nd consecutive Q2 appearance means he's now outqualified Gasly in all 4 events in 2024. Ocon also finished 14 seconds ahead of his teammate after surviving contact between them at the restart that gave Gasly floor damage that compromised his race pace, but both were near the back, ahead only of Logan Sargeant. That reverses the trend of the second half of last year when Gasly got the upper hand. And it appears struggles with tyre preparation are at the heart of Gasly's problems so far this year. Ocon is out of contract at the end of the season. That's why it's important for him to perform regardless of how bad the car is, either to boost his chances of a new Alpine deal or convince a rival team to sign him up. On paper, Suzuka looked like more of the same for Mercedes, strong practice pace that fades into also-ran territory come qualifying and a mediocre race to 7th and 9th, but there was more to it than that. Lewis Hamilton could have qualified 4th on a track that so badly exposed Mercedes' weaknesses last season, but was only 7th. A lot of work was done in the build-up to better understand how to set up the car and prepare the tyres to avoid overloading the rear axle. That provided a stronger baseline for the weekend. Hamilton was encouraged by progress through practice and qualifying and was far more confident in the Mercedes W15, but described the car in the race as pretty bad. He finished 9th after abandoning an attempted one-stop strategy, not helped by minor damage sustained in a brush with Leclerc. However, despite Hamilton's criticism, it's fair to say Mercedes couldn't show its true pace in the race in particular because of the strategy that cost significant time in the long first stint. As team principal Toto Wolff said, Mercedes was better than the results suggested. But the smoother weekend and improved qualifying pace reveals why Mercedes can at least be slightly encouraged. In particular, the pace in the high-speed first sector was a positive. Year on year, Mercedes was 0.332 seconds faster in the first sector, the second biggest gain of any team, having been extremely mediocre through the sweeps in 2023. Despite a disappointing race, Mercedes now believes its car is where it should have been for the Bahrain season opener, and a big part of that is the gains made with the way it's using its tyres. That's still not anywhere near good enough for a team of its resources and ambition, but it's at least a gentle improvement.